What if you got reincarnated in another world where you're the only boy amongst endless, thirsty girls? It's just another regular day in school as we see our hero, a young boy who can't take his eyes off a cute girl in his class. He says that sometimes he doesn't even notice that he's looking at this girl, and it's probably because he seems to have intrusive thoughts for her. However, it turns out that our hero and this girl have been friends right since they were kids, which means that they're pretty much like brother and sister now. Of course, since they've grown up with each other. Our hero believed that he would never do anything that would mess up the relationship he had with this girl. He's in an intense train of thought, but that's when his buddy wakes him up from his trance. We learn that the girl's name is Nishina, and our hero is called out for being a little creepy. However, he tells his buddy to shut up because he doesn't want his intrusive thoughts to be exposed. Even so, he is teased because not every boy has the chance to grow up with a cute girl when they are small. Their jealousy is understandable, but our hero defends himself by saying that he and Nishina don't even get along that well for them to be considered best friends or anything. The topic of their chat shifts to the bag our hero has got with him at school. It turns out that he is an active student in a kendo class, but it's not for his own personal growth as such. Basically, his dad just wants him to learn kendo and judo so that he can defend himself if he is ever under any kind of danger. It's not that safety is an issue for him, but he figures he might as well learn the fighting styles so that he can attack his useless boss or coworker when he grows up and gets a job. It's not a very heroic goal, but the boy is fine with it. We also learn that his dad makes video games for a living, but before this thought process goes any further, our hero is alerted by something odd and mysterious. It turns out to be some kind of monster figure who has a pot on its head. We finally learn that our hero's name is Yuta, but it comes at a rather unfortunate time because the monster suddenly pops up next to him. The pot on its head is actually its face, which looks disgusting and scary as it tries to choke Yuta, and not in a good way. He tries his best to resist, but the monster is way too strong for him, and it pushes Yuta to the edge of the window. Everyone starts to panic upon this sight, as nothing can be done for our hero, and he laments that he was never able to tell Nishina his true feelings. With that, Yuta is thrown to the ground, and all hope seems lost for our tragic hero. However, it's at this very moment when an angel drops by and connects with his soul. Yuta wakes up inside a forest at night, but he still has no idea what has happened to him. He thinks that he's still in school and was able to survive the fall because of his martial arts training. There's no one around him, so he picks up his phone to call his dad, but there's no network as well. From the looks of it, our hero seems to have been taken to another world. Yuta slowly starts to understand his surroundings and wonders if he's in the middle of the mountains. He figures he must be away from his town, so he just needs to walk for a bit and he'll get cell service in no time. However, he's in for a total shocker because when he does see some lights, they just happen to be coming from a giant castle. On top of that, the castle is surrounded by flying beasts that look a lot like dragons. As one would expect, dragons do not exist in Japan. This is a bit too much for Yuta to process, and he tries to figure where he is at this moment. He goes on to look up at the sky and notices that it's purple in color. Not just that, there's a red moon as well as a blue moon in this world. Yuta finally realizes that he's not on Earth anymore, but at the same time, he's not too sure if he's been reincarnated too, because he's still in the same body he had when he was on Earth. It's bad enough for Yuta to deal with his new reality, and then he hears some people coming towards him. Luckily, it just happens to be a cute girl and her bird friend who seems to be able to talk. This is all it takes for Yuta to be convinced that he's been reincarnated in a fantasy world. This girl happens to be a knight, and she stares at our hero with doubt because she hasn't seen him from around here. The funny thing is that the night girl looks a lot like Nishina, so this could be Yuta's chance to strike gold and finally act on all those intrusive thoughts he's been having for so long. The night girl introduces herself as Lumi, who is a paladin of the Caesar kingdom. She then asks Yuta to identify himself, and since he doesn't want to look shady, our hero proceeds to give his full name. He even claims that people like to call him the Sun, but his cringy words don't have much of an effect on Lumi. Instead, she is taken away by Yuta's voice because it seems to do something to her. She starts to murmur some words, and her bird friend also seems to sense something odd about this whole thing. Of course, none of this makes any sense to Yuta, so he tries to keep the situation calm. Lumi draws out her sword almost as if she's going to arrest Yuta, so he declares that he's not the person she's looking for. However, in a sudden twist, Lumi reveals that she's shocked because Yuta is a man. He has no idea what she means by that, so he asks Lumi if men are not allowed in this area. He even asks her if she worships a god that hates men, but all she can do is blush for now. Yuta notices that her face has gone red, so he asks Lumi if she's alright. However, she tells him to shut up and oddly accuses him of being the culprit behind his own appearance. Yuta is clueless as ever, and that's when Lumi asks her bird friend if she can take his life. This is not good news for our hero, but luckily for him, the bird friend tells Lumi that she needs to keep Yuta alive. The bird friend also has a name, and it happens to be Genius, which makes sense, given his powers to speak the human language. Genius asks Yuta if he has come from Earth, and this gives him some hope. He continues to refer to Genius as a bird and asks if he knows about Earth. But this makes Lumi upset, and she scolds Yuta for not treating Genius with the respect he deserves. She also says that Genius is a god and wouldn't taste good even if you tried cooking him. But that doesn't make sense because Yuta doesn't want to eat him. Yuta proceeds to call out Lumi for sounding ruder than he was. Before their chat can move ahead, some strange substance falls off a tree and is about to land on Yuta. Luckily, Lumi saves him, and it leads to a rather romantic moment. Sadly for our hero, Lumi doesn't look at it the way he would like her to, and smashes his face out of cute shyness. She accuses Yuta of being a creep and says that she should have let the strange substance hit him instead. Lumi states that Yuta is just here to pass his time with lewd acts and draws out her sword again. She declares that she hates all men and is about to attack our hero, but then she experiences a wet sensation. Basically, she starts gushing out fluids from her body without any control, and Yuta can only watch her in confusion. Genius decides to make things simple for Yuta and says that Lumi is currently going through a stage called the Springs of Lust. This is something that happens when the women of this world feel the need to breed. Of course, this makes Yuta feel like a playboy, but he doesn't want to act too proud, so he asks Lumi why she's on heat, even though she just claimed to hate men. This only angers the night girl, and she chokes Genius for saying something so silly in front of a total stranger. She even calls him a stupid bird, so Yuta calls her out because she just said that Genius was like a god. Lumi can't take the torture any longer, so she scolds Yuta for looking down on her. As a matter of fact, she claims that she could never even bring herself to like a man such as our hero, let alone wanting to breed with him. Yuta is a smart boy, so he simply holds Lumi's fingers to make her excited again. It works so well that Lumi starts to do unspeakable things to the fingers that Yuta had just touched, and she goes crazy with desire. Genius feels awkward because this is taking things too far, and he tries to calm Lumi down before she totally loses it. However, that's when a dragon monster shows up and charges at Lumi, who calls it a lizard for some strange reason. She is unable to bring out her sword at the right time, and the dragon knocks it out of her hand to gain the advantage. Genius fears the worst as the dragon is about to rip into Lumi, but that's when Yuta steals the spotlight. He uses Lumi's sword to attack the dragon, and he manages to cause a serious injury to the beast. Our hero is able to do this because of all the kendo classes he had taken back on Earth. He then returns Lumi's sword and asks her never to drop it again because it goes against the rules of kendo. He also leaves the dragon to be slain by the night girl because he is only an amateur in kendo for now. the dragon charges at our hero once again. But Lumi is ready this time, and she unleashes the full might of her sword to blow the monster away. Yuta is shocked to see how much power the sword has, but Lumi is even more surprised by his heroic efforts. She wants to know why he saved her, and he simply says that he doesn't need a reason to rescue cute and curvy babes. Yuta drops one more line on how it's a man's job to keep women safe, and this makes Lumi even more excited. She is unable to control her own beastly urges, so she unleashes herself upon our hero and attacks him with passion and desire. It's Yuta's first time doing such a thing, but Lumi can't be stopped anymore, and she takes control of his body. Genius can only watch them from a tree like a creep as Lumi proceeds to violate Yuta with her massive thirst. Our hero has no idea what's causing all this heat, but that's when Genius reveals that there are no men in this planet. As a matter of fact, the giant castle ahead is filled with nothing but cute girls. Since there are no human men in this world, the women can't control themselves around one. And since Yuta is the first man to have set foot into this world, he must now live a life dedicated to serving their needs. Of course, our hero wants answers, but for that, he will first need to satisfy Lumi, because she is not going to talk until her needs are fulfilled. Yuta has no other choice but to give in, and Genius says that this will be the first human mating session in over 30 centuries. Of course, this is a lot of pressure on him, and Lumi is also surprised to learn that humans can mate just like animals. Since Lumi is asking for his passion, our hero decides to do her proud, so he begins with his violation. Lumi is taken aback by his intentions and starts to feel shy, but that doesn't deter Yuta, so he asks her to present herself. She hesitates in doing so, but Yuta tells her that he won't be able to give her what she wants if she doesn't show him what he wants. After a bit of chatting, the two lovers finally get down to business, and it's a rather intense display of passion. The feeling is very new to both Lumi and Yuta because neither of them has done such acts before. Eventually, our hero pulls out the power of his tongue and goes to town on Lumi. This results in such a powerful explosion that the night girl passes out from satisfaction. Yuta slowly figures what he's just done, but for some reason, he also passes out next to her. In the middle of all this, we see Genius, who has been watching the whole thing from a tree like a shady creep. It might be that he likes to flap his wings to people getting freaky with each other. The night passes by, and it's daytime now in the fantasy world. Yuta wakes up from his sleep and looks around for Lumi, but is unable to find her. After a bit of looking around, he notices Lumi, who is hiding her face inside a tree trunk. She is clearly shy after the events of last night, and our hero is glad that she has gone back to normal. However, her going into heat was a serious matter, and Yuta also wonders if Lumi's bodily fluids have some sort of narcotic effect. That would have been able to explain why he had dozed off to sleep right after the nasty business he did with the night girl. Lumi is still not ready to show her face, but due to the events of the previous night, Yuta is able to see a lot more than what she would like to show. He tells her about it and proceeds to crack a joke, which is very funny to him, but clearly doesn't have the same effect on Lumi. She pulls her head out of the trunk and lands a direct hit on Yuta's face. She can't take the embarrassment anymore, so she pulls out her sword and is ready to end it all. However, Yuta calls her out and says that he doesn't need to be punished just because she wasn't able to control her passion. After all, Lumi was the one who attacked him with shady intentions, not the other way around. In the middle of this argument, we see Genius once again, who isn't really doing anything to stop the comical situation in front of him. Luckily, nothing serious happens, and the duo decides to make their way to town. However, on their way, Lumi states that it would be too risky to have a human male in the town. In order to keep Yuta's gender a secret, she decides to take him to the stray elf store. It's a bit confusing for Yuta, but Lumi explains that her world has not seen a human man for thousands of years. It's almost as if men are beasts of legend, so if one of them were to show up right now, It would put the world in a state of chaos. This makes sense to Yuta, but what he really wants to know is how he got here in the first place. He can only remember the angel girl who had come to collect him right after he was thrown to the ground by the scary monster. Our hero wonders what his role is in this world, and he also needs to find a way back to Earth. Before he can think any further, Yuta and Lumi reach the stray elf store. From the looks of it, this shop looks like a scam because there's a shady clearance sale going on, and the signs look rather suspicious. Yuta doesn't even feel like entering the shop. But then he notices that the signs are in the Japanese kanji language. That shouldn't be the case if this is a parallel world. And that's when it strikes our hero that he's been talking to Lumi this whole time, which means she can also speak Japanese. When he asks her about it, Lumi simply states that she's speaking the Caesarean language. She also realizes that Yuta can speak the same language as her. But this chat isn't going to bring any answers, so the couple enters the shop. Genius isn't here, so Yuta becomes a little suspicious. But Lumi says that it's fine because Genius is of a casual nature. Lumi is welcomed by a cat girl, and it makes Yuta question the types of people in this world. He doesn't think that the cat girl is a stray elf, but Lumi says this is what they look like. The cat girl is called Sayuri, and she is known for selling all kinds of goods that can't be found anywhere else. Yuta still isn't convinced that Sayuri is an elf because of her ears, so Lumi argues with him. But they get interrupted by the cat girl notices that Yuta is a human male. She gives a rather shady look while saying this, and our hero is surprised to see how easily he was found out. Of course, the main thing about a human male is the voice, so Yuta wants to know why it's such a big deal. Sayuri reveals that the voice matches that of the call, who seem to be this world's natural enemy, as per Lumi's words. Sayuri also states that she gets a lot of customers who wear the exact same uniform that Yuta is wearing. But the only difference is that none of them are human males. Without further ado, Sayuri gives Yuta a piece of candy and says that he should eat it if he wants to change his voice. Our hero is told that he will sound just like a girl if he eats this candy, so he proceeds to do so, but hates the taste of the candy. None of that matters because he now has a cute girl's voice and Lumi seems to love it. Our hero figures that he's just been given some helium, but neither of the girls know what that is. Sayuri gives Lumi 1 week's worth of candy, and the night girl wants to buy more stuff. But she has no money, so she has to put it on her tab. After a swift shopping session, Yuta is made to dress up as a girl, and he comments that he's gotten into some serious cross-dressing. Who knows, he might just end up liking it. Lumi doesn't know what that means, and it makes sense because there are no men in this world. Once again, Lumi repeats that Yuta can't let anyone know that he's a human male because it can disrupt the order of her world. It can also put Yuta's life in danger, so he agrees to keeping his identity a secret to avoid becoming a slave. Lumi asks him to make one more promise to her, which is to never touch a girl. This is because girls will be able to sense our hero's manhood just by touching him, which is what had happened to Lumi earlier. Yuta knows he can't awaken so many hidden beasts of passion, so he agrees to this condition as well. It's not much of an issue for Yuta because he's used to being a loner on Earth due to his awkward behavior. However, his stories don't make any sense to Lumi because she has no idea of how people function on Earth. As the duo heads to the town, Lumi tells Yuta that he should not wander around in the forest because there are a lot of monsters, just like the dragon from earlier. She also tries to make him feel lucky by saying her Paladin status allows her to protect beginners like Yuta. Lumi continues with her praises, but she is made to eat her own words when she steps into a huge pile of dragon poop. The night girl lets out a huge cry due to the smelly poop, but Yuta thinks she's being extra. Paladins shouldn't be so easy to mess with, but Lumi is just a girl at the end of the day, so our hero teases her some more by saying she smells. He continues to tease the night girl till they make their way to the town's wall. It's quite big, so Yuta wonders what it's trying to protect the town from. Suddenly, Lumi orders the doors to open, and that's exactly what happens, much to our hero's surprise. A couple of little girls show up and are happy to see Lumi return from the forest. They look at Yuta and ask about him, so Lumi says he's a girl she found in the forest. The Night Girls reveals that the twins are named Mona and Lisa, and they know everything about this world, so Yuta can ask them whatever he wants. The twins are known for being honest, and they show this immediately when they tell Lumi how much she stinks. Yuta is pleased to hear this, and the twins take it a step further by blatantly insulting the smell coming from Lumi's body. Now, we meet a girl named Lilia, who is pleased to see Lumi again, because she grew worried when the Night Girl didn't come back from scouting. Lumi gives her the same story, but Lilia is more concerned about the horrid smell coming from her body. With no face left to show, Lumi goes to take a bath and leaves the rest to Lilia. She decides to offer a nice meal to Yuta, but the twins first tell him about how Lilia is the best archer in their world. They also tell Yuta to respect Lilia and Lumi because they are the ones keeping this town safe. However, Lilia tells them to stop being rude, and then she takes Yuta out for a tour of the town. As our hero looks around the place, he is surprised that no one has seen through his female disguise. However, since nobody here knows what a man looks like, it makes sense that nobody can recognize Yuta. He also notices that the town looks like a historic ruin because there has not been any maintenance or repair work done. Women aren't good with such jobs, so he figures that's the reason behind this. Lilia offers some cold tea to Yuta, which shocks him because it's the complete opposite of his culture on Earth. Anyway, our hero does a quick scan on Lilia and states that she does not have the same appeal as Lumi, probably because of her flat body. She also has short hair, which does not make her worthy of his desire. Lilia notices Yuta starting at her chest, so she asks if there's anything on it. Our hero acts sassy and says that there's nothing on it at all. He then introduces himself, but uses the male pronouns of the Japanese language, which confuses Lilia. She asks for clarity, but Yuta brushes it off as a casual remark. In the middle of this chat, our hero spills some tea on himself, so Lilia offers to clean it up for him. He decides not to go ahead with that, but Lilia gets up and holds his hand to see how wet his clothes have become. Of course, this is not what Yuta should have allowed, and now Lilia can sense his manliness take over her body. She goes crazy and falls to the ground, which clearly makes Yuta worried for his own safety. Just as he had feared, even Lilia is now in heat, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. Lilia rolls around the floor, unable to control her urges, while Yuta just looks at her without a clue in the world. She tries to figure what's happening to her body and tries to keep herself calm, but the fluids inside her have other plans. Yuta casually asks her if she's fine, and Lilia starts to worry about being judged by him. Of course, women need to do something to keep their desires in check, but to show it to someone else is out of the question. Lilia is confused at first, but it doesn't take long for her to figure out that Yuta is a boy, because she went crazy only after touching him. Our hero realizes that he's messed up right from the start, even though he was warned against this. He doesn't deny what Lilia claims, and this gives her proof that she is in front of a real human boy. She goes close to Yuta and touches his face because she has only seen men in books so far. Our hero becomes alert when he hears this, but he has bigger fish to fry at the moment. Lilia can't hold her urges any longer and unleashes a fierce attack on Yuta's tongue. He starts to feel drowsy due to her fluids, just like he did when he got with Lumi. Things are about to get heated up, but then Lumi returns from her shower and proudly announces that she is now smelling fresh like flowers. Luckily, both Yuta and Lilia have managed to cover up and are sitting normally at the table. Lilia is having a hard time controlling herself, so Yuta creates a distraction and asks Lumi to show him to the toilet. He is then taken to his room, which is small, but looks good enough for him. Yuta asks for something to eat, which makes Lumi suspicious because he was taken to the restaurant by Lilia. He awkwardly says that he only had tea, so Lumi decides to get him some food. However, It only turns out to be a mixture of fruits and vegetables, which is what girls usually like to eat. Our hero doesn't like the meal, so Lumi asks him if he has a problem. He can't really complain, because he'd much rather eat this than dragon meat. Now, it's time to learn more about the kingdom of Caesar. So Yuta learns that he's in the city of Meath, which is one of 5 cities in the kingdom, along with a giant castle. There are only women living in these places, so that means Yuta is the only man in this population. The mere thought of this makes Lumi excited, and our hero can smell the fluids pouring from her body. He calls her out on her desires and gets scolded because Lumi feels shy. She decides to walk out of the room, but Yuta asks her a very important question. He wants to know how people are born in this world if only women exist in it. It's a fair point, but even Lumi doesn't have an answer to that. All that she knows is that children come out of the main castle, but they don't have any memories of the time they spent there. This gives Yuta a lot to think about, and he continues to assess the kingdom's facilities. He didn't expect any electricity, but there aren't any candles over here either. It's not much of a problem because the planet has 2 moons. But what really bothers Yuta is the story he just heard about the castle and the children coming out of it. He feels there's something shady going on inside the castle and wants to get to the bottom of it. He can't do much for now, so he just chills in bed and thinks about what he did to Lilia. Unlike Lumi, she seemed like a serious girl, so our hero feels bad for making her go into heat. He figures that he should be more careful and not let other girls touch him. But then he hears knocking on the door. He opens it and is shocked to see Lilia standing in front of him. Our hero tries to apologize for what happened earlier, but Lilia is here to solve another problem, which is her fountain of youth. Before we get into the details of what happens next, we are taken to a flashback where we see Lilia going through some books. Lumi walks in and comments on how diligent Lilia is when it comes to reading. She reveals that she's not really into the reading part, but is more interested in the pictures. Her reason is that she wants to learn how people lived in the past so that it can help her live in the present. It turns out that Lilia can't actually read the words in the book because the people of this world have forgotten their letters. It would have been great to know these letters because the books would be very useful to the women then. However, Lumi reveals that there are just too many books to read, and they won't be able to complete them, even if they knew the letters. Lumi then tells Lilia that it's good to study, but she must not miss the Quintet meeting because their leader Isekai'd gets very upset if anyone shows up late. Lilia agrees to show up to the meeting, and then Lumi leaves, but that's when we learn Lilia's true motives. She is not at all into studying, but she likes to look at the pictures of men in the book because it makes her full of desire. After all, men did live in the past, and that's why Lilia is so interested in them. This explains what she was saying to Yuta as well, and we can see Lilia express her desire to engage in shady acts by quenching her thirst all alone in the library. This brings us back to the present, where Lilia is now in front of a human male and can finally do unspeakable things like she had wanted to all her life. It's a very sudden thing for Lilia, and she's trying her best to fight her desires. But it's of no use, and she is completely helpless. She asks Yuta to help her deal with this issue, and our hero can smell the desire flowing from her body. It's actually stronger than Lumi's, but the whole thing makes Yuta confused. He has never done the nasty with girls before, so he asks Lilia to go and take care of herself. She says that she had done that multiple times, but it wasn't able to satisfy her cravings for him. Yuta comments that women will always be women, and Lilia suddenly realizes that she has revealed what she does to herself. This makes her feel embarrassed, but Yuta finds it cute, so he asks her what she wants him to do. Of course, Lilia states that the books had spoken about humans mating, so even she would like to do the same. She sounds full of passion as she says this, and our hero even expected to hear these words. But he is in a tough spot. He explains that humans should only do shady things with the people they like, and it makes Lilia panic. Yuta then states that she just wants to engage with him because he's a man and not because she likes him. His intentions are right, but Lilia takes it the wrong way and starts talking about how he has no reason to like her. Yuta tries to calm her down by saying they don't really know anything about each other, but she says that he already has an endless selection of women to choose from in this world. She then goes into a dramatic phase where she says that it's the end of the road for her. Yuta tries to tell her not to be extra, but she maintains that her reaction is fine. After all, she has just been turned down by the only man in the world. And that's actually quite sad if you think about it. Our hero feels the same way after hearing Lilia explain it to him, because she goes into detail on how horrible it is for her dream to be squished in front of her eyes, even after it came true. This only makes her fluids stronger, and the smell starts to mess with Yuta's head. He can't think properly anymore and concedes that the fountain of desire is some kind of narcotic that hinders critical thinking. Now that he is also in the same frame of mind as Lilia, Yuta is prepared to do the nasty once again. He tells Lilia that he is not turning her down, but simply wants to know her better. When she asks how she can make that happen, Yuta says that she will need to show her true self to him. It's a bit much for the cute tomboy to hear, but this is how it has to be if she wants to see her dream come true. She's a little shy, but Yuta says that he's only making her do this because it's what she wants. Our hero goes into sass mode once again and comments on Lilia's body, which makes her feel even more shy. A series of events follows, and it ends with Yuta getting a clear view of what no man has seen before, which makes Lilia all the more nervous about her first time. Despite the intense buildup, Yuta doesn't exactly know where he needs to proceed as he hasn't done the deed before. He is also blinded by the fluids all over the place, so it's hard for him to be exact. The smell is getting too much for him to handle, so he asks Lilia how badly she wanted to breed for her to be in this much heat. As the tension rises, Yuta jokes around by saying he never thought of Lilia this way, because she looked too serious for that kind of stuff. After a bit of chatter, he gets down to business, and the dark setting of night serves as the right background for such lewd acts. While Yuta uses the power of his tongue to subdue his latest fan, we see Lumi in her room wondering if her lover boy is sleeping fine in his new home. It is clear that she also wants to be with him, but she can't be so honest with Yuta just yet because she's only just met him. Of course, she tries to fight her feelings for a bit, but then she remembers what Yuta said about it being a man's duty to protect women, since she can't lose control again. Lumi makes a face on her pillow and calls it the Yuta pillow. It still smells like her, so she decides to go ask Yuta to rub some of his scent on the pillow. Meanwhile, Yuta conquers Lilia with his finisher move, but she manages to stay awake, unlike Lumi, who had passed out after the session. Our hero reveals that he also did this to the night girl, and it makes Lilia a little jealous because she thought she was his first. She has now experienced something very different, and she doesn't think that she can live without Yuta anymore. Our hero is thrilled to hear this and says that he is ready to take things further with Lilia. However, he doesn't realize that Lumi has also walked into the room and is seeing this sight with her own eyes. Before we move on with this scandalous revelation, we are given a brief summary on the events that have passed. Mostly, it's all about our hero Yuta being sent to a parallel world, which is like a paradise to him because he's the only man here. He's already gained favor with two pretty girls in Lumi and Lilia. But the main problem for him now is that Lumi has walked in on him and Lilia doing the nasty. Luckily, this happens just before the mating session, so our hero's purity is still intact to a certain extent. Even so, this is not a good situation for Yuta, as he has been caught with another woman. Just like any other man, he also tries to explain his actions to Lumi in awkward fashion. But to his surprise, she doesn't react angrily to the discovery. She simply says that Yuta can enjoy himself if he wants because he is the only man in the world right now. Our hero is just as confused as Lilia, but Lumi explains that Yuta belongs to all the women of this world. Yuta feels bad about what has happened, but Lumi walks out of the room to allow her lover boy to complete his mating with Lilia. However, Lilia dresses up and chases after Lumi in the streets. She finally catches up to her and asks the night girl if she knew about Yuta being a boy. Lumi says yes and explains that she wanted to keep quiet about it in order to avoid any chaos in the world. Now, Lilia says that she's no good because she's touched Yuta and can't think about anything else. She's been going crazy ever since she found out about a man being in her world, and says sorry for losing control of her urges. Lumi asks her not to be this way because her passion could not be helped in front of a man. She even goes on to confess what she did with Yuta, and says that she's been feeling the same way ever since. As a matter of fact, Lumi was the one who wanted to keep Yuta a secret, so she feels a little selfish for doing so, since she wanted her lover boy all to herself. Maybe this was Lumi's fault all along. Lilia shows some compassion towards her peer, but it's getting dark now, so the girls decide to talk about Yuta the next day. With that, both Lumi and Lilia walk away, but we can see that our hero has been sneakily listening to their chat on the side. Lumi goes back to her room, still holding her Yuta pillow from earlier. However, there is sadness on her face, and we all know why. Soon enough, she throws the Yuta pillow on the floor and punches it out of anger. With that, Lumi can finally express her true emotions as she continues to punch the pillow with tears rolling out of her eyes. She is clearly upset with Yuta for cheating on her, which means that Lumi might just be falling in love with him. Meanwhile, we can see Yuta lying in bed thinking about what he's just done. Of course, if this was the real world of Earth, it would have a whole other thing, but it's just a fantasy place as of now. What our hero doesn't get is that he's feeling depressed over his actions, even though he doesn't need to feel that way. After all, it's not like he's going out with either Lumi or Lilia. There is no commitment, but Yuta is still upset with himself because he has no idea what he's going to do in this world. He thinks long and hard about what a man can do in a world filled with women. After some intense thoughts, he can only come up with a conclusion that his sole reason for being here is to live the dream by doing shady things with all the girls. He passes out in the middle of this realization and wakes up the next day feeling hungry. He can't really talk to Lumi or Lilia, so he decides to head into town for a quick bite. As he takes a stroll in the open streets, he is really shocked to only see women everywhere. It's not a normal sight at all for our hero, but this is the way of the world over here. Suddenly, Yuta feels a sense of discomfort, and it's not a social issue arising out of his fear of being around so many women. He can also sense something else which doesn't feel natural. Yuta starts to feel paranoid about what this could be, and that very moment, someone calls out to him from behind. He looks back instantly, but it only happens to be the twin duo of Mona and Lisa. They don't look very happy and confront Yuta about Lumi and Lilia. They ask our hero if he did anything crude with the night girl and the archer girl, but he obviously can't speak the truth, so he simply denies it. Then, the twins tell Yuta that Lumi and Lilia are waiting for him in the library, so he starts to panic. He rushes to the scene and finds the girls, but Lumi starts lashing out at him for being late. She mocks his sleeping needs, but our hero simply says that he can't wake up early unless he has a clock to look at. Lumi just tells him to wake up to the bell ringing, so Yuta agrees to do that moving forward. Now, Lumi tells Yuta that she has discussed what happened last night with Lilia, and the both of them have decided to pretend like it never happened at all. This is because a man has showed up in their world after over 3,000 years, so it's not something that two girls can handle on their own. This news needs to be shared with the other three members of the quintet, so Lumi and Lilia can't afford to expose their secret sessions with Yuta to them. It makes sense to our hero, so he agrees to what Lumi says. He also states that he knows the girls would never do anything to harm him, and tells them both that he believes in them. This makes both Lumi and Lilia blush, but Lumi instantly scolds Yuta for acting like a player. However, she gets interrupted when the other three members of the quintet show up and ask her why she has called for a meeting over here. The other members are just as cute as Yuta's new harem, so he checks them out with eagerness. The girls take a look at Yuta and ask why it was so necessary for them to come and see him. Of course, they don't know that he's a man, so they joke about it. But then Lumi gives them the biggest news of their lives by saying Yuta is indeed a human male and not a girl. As expected, it shocks all the other members of the quintet, and they look on in complete disbelief at our hero, while Lumi and Lilia wait for their anxious words. Of course, now that the room is filled with eager women, our hero is left with no other choice but to disclose his identity to them. We are now introduced to each of the other quintet members, and first up is the guardian Haru, who thinks that Lumi is trying to joke about Yuta. Then, we have the lancer Momo, who is already filling her mind with intrusive thoughts over the prospect of having a man in her presence. Finally, we have the strider Misaki, who is not ready to believe such a thing, especially because the last man in this world passed away over 3,000 years ago. Since there is no other way of knowing the truth, Yuta is told to show what he has not shown any girl before. He is a bit taken aback to hear this, but the women of this world do know that male animals have a certain body part, so even human men should have it. All the girls gang up on Yuta, even though he isn't too keen on showing his manhood, as if he's in an art gallery. Even Lilia urges her lover boy to prove his manliness by showing his hidden elephant. But our hero can't understand why everyone is becoming so excited. He openly says that he does not have any interest in showing off his body. But it's at this very moment when the effect of the voice candy wears off. Yuta is shocked to hear his manly voice, but it's the other quintet women who are more interested in this. He realizes that he had forgotten to take his daily dose of the candy today, and that's why he's become exposed to the quintet. Misaki identifies this voice to be the same as that of the call, and it enrages her because she believes that Yuta is one of them. She takes out her blade and is about to attack our hero, but gets pulled back by the other women. Misaki insists that Yuta is evil and needs to be dealt with, but Haru asks her to calm down. Even then, Misaki asks why Lumi and Lilia would allow someone like Yuta to enter their city. She goes on to say that she must get rid of Yuta, but then Lilia puts her in her place by saying it's only Yuta's voice that's similar to the call. To try and end him simply because of that is not logical at all, because he looks nothing like the call. This shuts up Misaki, who realizes that she has messed up, but at the same time, her ego is too big for her to say sorry. So she simply walks away and says that she will not breathe the same air as a man. This leaves Yuta with the other four girls, and Lilia says that Misaki's hatred for the call is way too strong to be ignored. Our hero states that the call are mentioned a lot in this world, and this is because they are the natural enemies of the women. He also learns that Misaki's sister was attacked and ended by one of the call members, which is why she hates them so much. Anyway, this is not the time to be talking about the past, and Lilia mentions that the real reason Yuta has been brought here is for the quintet to decide what to do with him. The first question is to know if anyone else is aware of a man being present in this world. None of the humans know about Yuta, but then the cat girl Sayuri is brought up. She was the one who gave the candy to Yuta in the first place, but she would never bother going against the humans, so she's a safe option. Haru says that in any normal situation, such news would be taken directly to the queen. But Lumi says that there are a lot of women like Misaki who hate men in this world. The problem is that these women would unleash their hatred towards the call on Yuta for no good reason, and it can lead to a huge mess. Lumi suggests that the best option for now is to keep hiding Yuta as a girl, because it's the only way to keep him safe. Once he gets to learn a bit about this country, he will be able to take a decision on what to do with his life. Our hero agrees with Lumi on this, because he does want to know more about this new place that he's found himself in. After all, if he has a purpose for being reincarnated here, he needs to make sure he performs his duties. The girls are okay with this, but Lumi warns Yuta about forgetting to eat his daily dose of candy. Our hero owns up to his mistake and promises not to do it ever again, after which Momo decides to end the meeting as she has been called to the castle. However, before she leaves the room, she takes one more look at Yuta and says that she's going to have a nice, long chat with him later. She leaves the room, and Yuta looks on in wonder, while Lumi and Lilia show disgust on their faces. Lumi wants to be with her lover boy, so she asks him to come to her room as she wants him to do something for her. Our hero agrees to it, but Lilia becomes alert after hearing Lumi's request. Meanwhile, we see Momo plotting something sinister because she wants to have a monopoly on the first man in this country for over 30 centuries. After all, she is never going to get a chance like this ever again. Now, Yuta is taken to Lumi's room, which is quite big in comparison to his own home. Of course, she is a paladin who is part of the Quintet, so it's one of the perks of her job. Yuta wants to know why he's been brought here, and then Lumi shows him the Yuta pillow, which looks a little creepy. He has no idea what's going on, and it only becomes worse when Lumi asks him to hug the pillow for her. Yuta wants to know why he needs to do this, but decides to hug the pillow anyway, because he needs to make up for his affair with Lilia. He asks Lumi if this is okay, and she immediately snatches the pillow away from him. She then pushes our hero out of her room because she doesn't need him anymore. Yuta is confused by her behavior, and then we see Lumi staring at the creepy pillow. She proceeds to hug it with joy because now she finally has something which smells like her lover boy. While Lumi does unspeakable things to the pillow, our hero wonders what that random task was all about. However, he hears someone refer to him as a human male, so he quickly turns around to see who it is. Luckily, it's just Genius, who has finally decided to show himself again, and also seems to have 3 legs. Clearly, he has a lot going on that Yuta himself is not able to understand. Our hero decides to mock the talking bird for having too much of a rebel spirit, and even compares him to a crow. However, the only thing that Genius wants to tell him is that he still hasn't technically done the deed with any of the girls yet. This is technically true because Yuta's tongue has been more than enough to cause explosions. Our hero maintains that he doesn't want to become a mating machine, but Genius says that it's only natural for him to act out his intrusive thoughts with pretty girls. On top of that, he also mentions that the girls of this world need to do such things when they become adults. If such an action doesn't happen, then they will simply pass away. This shocks Yuta beyond belief, and he lets out a huge scream in discomfort. Our hero is unable to accept such a thing, but then he remembers that uneasy feeling he had earlier when he was walking around town. This feeling came about because he could only see young girls everywhere. Genius goes on to explain that the girls of this world go crazy upon seeing a man because of this very reason. The fountain of passion is designed to lure men into their bodies because it's a means of survival. Yuta asks if all the girls know this fact, and Genius says that they know they will pass away upon becoming adults. However, nobody knows that they will continue to live if they engage with a man, and simply accept their lifespan to be short. Since there has not been a single man in this world for 30 centuries, even Genius did not decide to let this truth reach the girls. It's a sad reality, but Genius says that it's not like Yuta can save tens of millions of girls with his manhood. There's only so much that a man's elephant can do, after all. Despite this, Genius does say that Yuta has the freedom of speech, so he can choose to do whatever he wants with this information. The talking bird flies away, but Yuta asks him to wait because he wants to know if this whole mating survival process is a thing of genetics or something else. Genius changes to an ominous tone and says that it's a curse which has been placed upon this world by the god of deep jealousy. This god is not at all like Genius and is actually quite scary. But if Yuta were to somehow end him, then he will be able to lift the curse as well. This can probably be the reason why our hero was reincarnated in this world in the first place. With that, Genius flies away and leaves our hero to ponder about what he's just learned. If this curse thing is really true, then it means that even Lumi and Lilia will pass away if they don't do shady things with him. Meanwhile, we see Lumi, who is busy showering kisses upon her new Yuta pillow. She continues to enjoy the smell of her lover boy all over the pillow. But then we see Yuta walking into the room and feeling weird about what he's just witnessed. Lumi also realizes that she's been caught and is completely distraught over her actions. She tries to act cool and asks what Yuta wants. So he says he came here looking for food. Lumi tells him to go outside and chew on the weeds, but our hero can see right through her. Lumi feels shy and asks Yuta not to look at her with those eyes. However, our hero asks her if she really likes him. This makes the night girl confused, and she says that she can't really give an answer to that. Yuta maintains that he's the only man in this world, so it makes sense for her to like him. Lumi finally admits that she's happy to have Yuta as the only male in her country, and our hero says that he's thankful to have met Lumi first in this world. She starts to feel the fountain of passion once again, and it only gets more intense when Yuta suggests mating for now. Lumi immediately loses all sense of control and proceeds to get violated by her lover boy. Since there is no protection in this world, our hero also decides to finish his business the old-fashioned way. What's next for Yuta in this female planet? Like, share, and subscribe if you liked this video. Show enough love, and I'll make sure to upload part 2 as well. Okay then, see you in the next one.